on I'm not going to take any chances on letting the good stuff get away. So, Aurelio, can you unmute? You know,
Okay.
I mean, we're excited about what's happening here, and I mean, you're leading a big band of people across Europe, and you're doing it from South Florida, right?
Yeah, right.
That's a beautiful thing, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I think that we are creating a very strong movement here. We're just in the beginning, but I truly believe that in 2 3 weeks we are going to explode with all these new projects, is this new entrepreneurship here in Europe.
Oh, yes, of course. Thank you. So, hello, and what we have. Good evening and good day over there. And I'm happy that I'm still part here of your call, of your external call, Keith and John. It's so amazing that we have every bi-weekly the challenge and the opportunity to share really nice news and, of course, have famous speakers here on board. And if you don't mind, I love to share a flyer from the back office here just for a second that everyone understands what a great speaker you have here with us today. That the people have a better understanding what the advisory board is and that they can see it or download it in the business center, right? What do you think? Are you okay?
Yeah, please do.
Can I do the German version first?
Yeah,
Or
go
just
Yeah,
ahead. Go ahead.
absolutely.
it's a pre-translated thing, what we will have available for Germany as well. So just that everyone understands, you see we have a special flyer where you see the advisory board, the science advisory board from Immunitech, and that we are in the lucky situation that one of them will speak to us today. Maybe if someone of you was already on the call 2 months ago, I think, but correct me if I'm wrong, that you had already the opportunity to listen to him. His name is the unbelievable John Molson. Welcome to the call.
Thank you.
So now I stop sharing the screen. And yes, so that's all. Maybe you can share with us a little bit more about your background and why are you part of the advisory board and what is your history about this? This is always important for me as well to learn more about the company and you, of course.
Well, we're going to get into that, Stefan, as we go through this. We got some amazing questions for John to be laid out there. So, any of you that have had trouble getting on, we reposted the link into the WhatsApp group. I think it should work. So, if you've got people that are having trouble, um, that'll be there. The question, Stefan, is so if you could post that in the chat for that flyer, people are asking for that as well. So once
Yeah.
again, it's a great day to be here. It's a great day to be here with Immunitech. And John Molson and I were just discovering, I think it was 29 years ago when John and I first met when as this journey of Immunotech started. So I'm going to turn the call over to this point for questioning and leading this part of it to our good friend, Mr. John Solider.
Hey,
Good day,
Keith,
John.
Hey, how you doing? Welcome everybody. Appreciate everybody being here from both Europe and North America. Hey, Patricia, how are you? Good to see you. Okay. Hey, everybody else. Mr. Molson, how are you?
Good.
So, listen, this is always fun. John Molson and I, like Keith, we go back almost 3 decades that we've been doing business together. And I want to share a little bit about John. First of all, John was one of the three founders of Immunitech. I mean, way back, 1995, 1996, when this project was being put together, and it was just a research project at that point out of McGill University. John had the foresight to say, this product is going to be a game changer for people. He saw that. He was a visionary in that respect, along with his two partners, Dieter Beer, who's German, of course, and Chuck Roberts, who is Canadian. In addition to that, John has been a pro athlete. He's been a cyclist many years, been a triathlete, still works out diligently every single day. On top of that, his son is a professional athlete. He's been in the National Football League as a kicker. In addition to that, his family's been involved in the sports business for many years in Canada. They own one of the premier franchises in all of professional sports, the Montreal Canadiens hockey team. In addition to that, his family sponsors sporting events throughout the world. Okay, so he knows a lot about a lot of different things when it comes to my favorite word, ergogenics. And ergogenics is basically performance enhancement. Okay, so it's very, very important, not only for athletes. I mean, obviously, 1/10 of 1% of people on the planet are elite athletes, but 99 and 9/10% of us are people who have to go out and perform every single day. We have to perform to feed our families. We have to perform in our businesses. We have to perform, some of us are still performing. My friend Rudy's on here, who's a triathlete at 77 years old, for example. Okay. Some of the rest of you are participants in different things in senior level athletics. So, you know what I'm saying? But at the same time, more important than that, performance for life. And John is an expert in that, certainly. He's our research ambassador. Well, what does that mean exactly? That's a broad term, right? We hear ambassador, we think of the United Nations or whatever. Well, in John's case, it means that he deals with all the different researchers around the world, different names that you'll hear. Dr. Larry Lance, for example, who did a performance study in Ontario a number of years ago. Dr. Lewis, who runs Orico, which is a sports performance company out of Ireland. Dr. Linsman, who's done our studies, for example, on TBIs, traumatic brain injuries, et cetera, et cetera. John deals with all of these individuals on a collective basis, helps them to get what they need in terms of funding, in terms of product, in terms of information for Immunotech. So he's got a very, very key role. So when you hear these things, and I'll give you one last example. We've all heard about the Miami soccer team that's been involved with Immunotech now for the last year, almost 2 years now. And the great Lionel Messi, right? Greatest player in the world, I believe. I'm not a big soccer guy, but I believe he's the #1 player in the world, or certainly one of them. And that relationship was a result of John's relationships with Orico and with Dr. Lewis, okay, as one of many examples of the different tips of the spear that John touches in terms of Immunical and Immunotech. So it's my privilege to welcome both a good friend and a man I learned a great deal from about Immunical on a regular, consistent basis, even after 28 years, my friend, Mr. John Molson. John, how are you today?
Great.
So, John, let's get right into it. There are many references in some of the early scientific papers about Immunical's similarity to human milk. Can you explain how it's similar?
Yeah, and this is very important because human milk was the model for Dr. Bunos. So that's how he evaluated and measured the effectiveness of Immunical is vis-a-vis what human milk does and what it gives to the baby, the neonate. So when the baby is born, human milk is 100% whey, and when the baby is about 3 months old, human milk shifts to 80% whey, 20% casein. Now, cow's milk is the exact reverse. Is 20% whey, 80% casein. The key proteins found in human milk also exist in that fraction of cow's milk, but obviously the quantities vary. So human milk for him became the standard, and the idea was is that you preserve these key protein fractions, not all of them, some of them, in their what's called their native conformation. And this is what he found imparted this benefit to the mice and to humans, etc.
So, John, Dr. Bunos would do an evaluation of Immunical's purity versus other protein sources that we're all familiar with, be it chicken, be it fish, be it meat, etc. How did he explain and do that comparison, and how did he evaluate the outcome of Immunical being superior to all other protein sources?
Yeah, so one of the ways he explained it to me was, if you look at the bacteria count in, for instance, milk and cheese, it's measured in the thousands. In Immunical, it's measured in the hundreds. And when they remove the lactose from Immunical, they subject it to water. So all the water-soluble toxins are removed, and then it's defatted, so all the fat-soluble toxins are also removed. So you have a very pure protein versus, what you see in fish, in meat, etc. So, on a comparative basis, you're dealing with something that's extremely pure.
So If you could explain the difference between denatured versus undenatured and why it's important in terms of the standpoint of Immunical.
Now, this is critical because, if you look at the early scientific work of Dr. Bunos, I mean, he and Dr. Patricia Kongshaven, through their different evaluations, looking at different data, reading papers, etc., became to understand what the mechanism was. But before they really had a grasp on it, all of a sudden the experiment stopped working. And they came to the realization that temperature or excessive temperature affects the mechanism of action of this product. And what it does, it's like if you look at a protein molecule, it looks like a ball of wool. And if you heat that ball of wool excessively, it unravels and it doesn't affect the nutritional value of the product. It affects its biological activity. And the same way you cook an egg, you don't change the nutritional value, but you change the conformation of these proteins, which affects, again, the biological activity. And so that's, became something very important to him in terms of how we move to produce Immunical in the lab to an industrial setting and preserve this.
And let's talk about packaging for a minute. Now, keep in mind, a lot of the folks that are on the call here with us this afternoon, John, are new. They're in Germany, they're in Austria, they're in other markets that are new for Immunotech. And they may wonder, as do a lot of people still in North America when they join the business, why do we use envelopes instead of containers like so many other companies do for protein products?
Again, one of the things that will denature the product is moisture. So, if the product is submitted or sits in a humid environment, it's going to cause the product to denature, obviously at varying rates depending on the environment. And so it's packaged in individual sachets, which preserves the mechanism of action, but also is very important vis-a-vis the shelf life of the product. So you have a 2-year shelf life because it's sealed in that environment.
And let's talk a little bit about studies. I mean, we've had 85 plus publications to date. Can you describe what that entails?
Yeah, so as I explained, Dr. Bunos always described this discovery as serendipity. And so, like most things in life, you don't start out trying to discover something. Through his incredible background, his incredible insight, and marrying the opportunity with having, working in a teaching hospital, the equivalent of Harvard, those early days of the Montreal General, where you had these incredible researchers together with Dr. Kongshaven there with their mouse models. All of this came together. And the 85 publications is really, it's like a story looking at how they went from the earliest days and describing what they potentially had to then, understanding in different pathologies, why Immunical acts the way it does, how it acts, etc. So it's a chronological history of the science of discovery.
And in our clinical trials, both past and present, what's the dosage that's used?
They settled on 20 grams. And, the key concept here that Dr. Bunas explained to me, as you see in nature, more is not better. So there's a delicate balance between, not enough, too much, and just enough. And this is, why he used human milk as the standard bearer. In other words, that human milk has very specific percentages in terms of the protein, cysteine content, etc. And so this was his model.
And how about when we do trials with children, for example, the autism study? What was the dosage for children?
Yeah, so again, there was a lot of pediatric work done in pediatric cancer, pediatric AIDS, autism, and they came up with a formula of 0.5 grams per 2.2 pounds of body weight for kids under 40 pounds.
And how is Immunotech able to get the claims in Canada? And this is huge, folks. I want you to hear this, John. Maybe you can elaborate a little bit on what this really means and how big this is in the Canadian market, certainly, on immune function. The fact that we actually can make claims in Canada on the immune function and performance of Immunical?
Yeah, so, when we started out, we were faced with many, many obstacles that we had to overcome. When Dieter Beer, well, the original research was funded by the National Research Council of Canada. And when the genome came into vogue, then they pulled the funding from Dr. Bunos. And this is when, he had his depression and he had great difficulty psychologically because he had been working on this for years and he was on the verge of, these different developments. And all of a sudden the Canadian government decides that's it, we're going to fund the genome. And that's when Dieter Beer stepped in. So, he continued funding it and basically carried on until today.
And let's talk a little bit, John, about the fact that there's a new paper put out by Harvard recently that reveals a troubling factor about the increase in dementia. Can you talk about it and how Immunical helps to combat this phenomenon?
Yeah, that's, one of the things that Dr. Bruno spoke to me about extensively, besides the effect on immune function, was the effect on essentially pollution and how insidious pollution is. And this whole story is about inflammation. Many of these processes that we studied have an inflammatory component. And one of the key things you have to understand is, that what happens in either preceding disease or during the disease process is you have this pro-oxidant or inflammatory environment where you have glutathione depletion, cysteine depletion, and by normalizing this, you mediate the inflammation. And so this is what we found vis-a-vis diseases, like dementia, et cetera. They definitely have an inflammatory component in the brain. And a source of that inflammatory component is pollution. And in this particular article, they talked about particulate matter, which is emitted by diesel exhaust. And what's interesting, one of our earliest studies was in asthma, exercise-induced asthma. And we collaborated with a researcher at a U.S. university who actually worked with a U.S. Olympic team in Lake Placid. And he found that the female hockey players had airway remodeling and airway inflammation. And they discovered later that it was due to the Zambonis that were burning diesel exhaust and emitting it and, causing this inflammation. Anyways, we ran a study and Immunical was able to, excuse me, prevent this from occurring and normalize their breathing function. So, we saw early on its benefits.
And let's talk a little bit, John, about the history of Immunitech, the company, because many people are new. We got some old timers here, but we got some new folks as well. You had a very famous meeting between yourself, Chuck Roberts, Dieter Beer, and I believe Alex Koenigsberg. I think you were at the marina, and when this kind of all got decided on who was going to do what and how this all kind of played out, and here we are almost 30 years later, and we've got a successful brand, successful company. We're launching new markets, et cetera, et cetera. And, the rest is history, as they say. But if we could go back for a minute, those almost 30 years ago, to that famous meeting between you guys, talk about that a little bit. How did that all come about?
Yeah, it was, it's interesting because Dieter, before we met, was thinking of ways to commercialize this product and had met with a number of pharma companies, both in Canada, in Europe, as well as Asia. And he couldn't put the right deal together. And one of the largest pharma companies in Canada, the chief researcher for this company, who had retired, had phoned Dieter and wanted Immunical for his mother, who was very sick with advanced cancer. And they were talking, and he asked Dieter, have you done a deal with any of the pharma companies? And Dieter said, no, we can't find the right deal. He said, don't do that. He said, go directly to the population. And after that, through one of our lawyers who knew, I think, either a notary or a lawyer for Dieter, set up a meeting between myself, Dieter, and Chuck and Dr. Bunos in Chuck's office at Roberts Evergreen. And we sat for a couple of hours. It was, incredibly intimidating meeting Dr. Bunos for the first time. And I was only worried about not saying the wrong thing. It's you meet an eminent scientist and you don't know like what he's talking about really at that time. But he brought, loads and loads of research, and they talked about all the different opportunities and, potentially about taking this directly to the general population. And Dr. Bunos told me that after they had the meeting, they're driving back into Montreal, and Dieter asked Dr. Bunos, "So what did you think of the meeting?" And he said to Dieter Beer, "I like Chuck and John." So fortunately, he said that, and we were able to put a deal together, which I think we signed in November, and the company started in 1997 in January.
The rest, as they say, is history, right? So,
Yeah.
a couple other questions, John, as long as I've got you, and we got a couple of minutes left here. For the sake of our friends in Europe, a couple of names come up, three significant names come up in relevance to Immunotech, Immunical in Europe. The first one we've already just mentioned a couple of times, one of your two partners, Dieter Beer. You want to tell people a little bit about Dieter, who, by the way, is still living. He's 87. He just went to a meeting last weekend with our colleague Jim Spencer in Toronto. So he's still going strong at 87. But anyway, tell people a little bit about Dieter and his background, because I think it's relevant that they know, once again, not only your origin, but also Dieter's origin business-wise.
Well, he was a very successful businessman and, very determined, very bright. Um, he had one of the largest electronics distribution companies in Europe, and he sold it. And he, was the type of entrepreneur that looked at different opportunities and funded them. And that's what he did when he eventually spoke with Dr. Bunos, is his family was very interested in alternative medicine, so to speak. And so he understood exactly when he met Dr. Bunos what Dr. Bunos was talking about and the potential application. And so he set up an office for Dr. Bunos and started funding this research and funding the patent applications that emanated from the research. So we're very fortunate because, that's I was able to Dr. Bunos, Dr. Bunos talked about this, the fact that, we spent a lot of money, and I'm talking millions of dollars, running these studies. We ran them over, we're still finishing them off, but over a 25-year period. And because Dieter knew the importance of doing that. And so we had a champion. And I was always, really grateful for that. So many of those studies that you see today are the result of having Dieter as a champion and backing it.
And the second name that comes up occasionally, it should come up more, but it comes up occasionally, is Dr. Luc Montagnier. And I remember, John, walking into Chuck Roberts' office at the first building we were in. This was in about 1998. And there's a book about that thick, hopefully you can see my hands here, about that thick, a medical textbook called Treating Oxidative Stress in Cancer and HIV. And it's by a Dr. Luc Montagnier from the Pasteur Institute in Paris. And Chuck went to, I believe it was chapter 47, which was all about the usage of Immunical with a family that was HIV infected. But you want to talk about Montagnier a little bit, Nobel Prize winner, Dr. Luc Montagnier, by the way, and his importance in the development of Immunical?
Well, some of our researchers had worked at the Pasteur Institute, and Dr. Montagnier was at a World AIDS Congress, I believe in Japan, where, he talked about this article and some of the work done in pediatric AIDS patients. So anytime you get people like that who work at an institute, or you get mentioned by people like that, that tells you the importance of the work and the product.
And he won the Nobel Prize. Do you remember what year it was that he won for HIV?
No.
I don't either. Keith, you remember by any chance what year that was?
2008.
2008 Nobel Prize winner. So this was a book, and I know some of you are medical doctors on the call here. Some of you are nurses, like my friend Patricia up in Saskatchewan. So you're all familiar. When I say a medical textbook this thick, I'm not exaggerating. This is something you could do curls with and get a good workout, right? And the fact that a Nobel Prize winner had both used our product in his research, and in addition to that, had taken the due diligence to write about it and report on it, was very, very significant. And finally, John, a guy who became a good friend of yours, who I got to know fairly well as well, who came here and brought Immunical to the presence really of the athletic community because of the anti-inflammatory response, and contributed so much to Immunitech in the very few short years he was here, happens to be a German. And his name was Dr. Wolf Droge. And you want to talk about Dr. Droge a little bit? Because once again, some of the folks are familiar with him, some of the folks are not, but played a very significant role once again in the development of our brand.
Yeah, first of all, I want to apologize to everybody because I was distracted. Dr. Droge, I didn't answer the question earlier. Dr. Droge was a gentleman, we were very fortunate, who put together all the data and presented it to the Canadian government to get our claim on immune function. So he was instrumental in that, and he was also instrumental in developing a protocol for the aging study, which was, the second aspect of our claim on performance. So he played a really important role, and I can't tell you what it was like to work around this gentleman. I mean, he was a rare individual, and these are special people. You meet great athletes, and then you meet academics, and then you meet you have a chance to work with two people, Dr. Bunos and Dr. Droge, who were the first in the world to publish in certain areas. And Dr. Droge was considered a world authority in redox physiology, and was the first person to work on glutathione in a living organism. So these are very special people, and the fact that we're able to recruit somebody like that, Dr. Droge told me that when he retired from the German National Cancer Institute, mandatory retirement at the age of 65, he had a stack of offers on his desk, but he came to Canada, and specifically he wanted to work on this aging study. And just a side note to that aging study, the person we did the aging study with at the University of Montreal is funded by some of the top institutes in the United States. And he said to me, John, people come to me with projects where you're talking about something, very esoteric with very little application to the general population. He said, that the study we're doing, looking at Immunical on physical performance in resistance exercise in the elderly population, has such a broad application. And I think that's, the reason we're so lucky to have fallen into this opportunity is the breadth of the application of Immunical in terms of quality of life, both on the performance side as well as the prevention side. I mean, it's, absolutely unique.
And it's funny because I'm going to be speaking about the history of Immunitech next week in Los Angeles. And John's been kind enough to share with me some of his notes on Dr. Droge. And I was going through them yesterday. And it's just amazing. I mean, just 2,000 papers as a result of his research. Over 2,000 individual papers have been written over the years. And the article that I'm referencing is 4 or 5 years old. So there's probably more than that. So, I guess the point on this, John, just to wrap up, and I'd love your final thoughts on this, is, when we go to work with this brand, we sometimes forget that we're standing on the shoulders of giants between Dr. Bunos, Dr. Kongshaw, and Dr. Droge, some of the other doctors, Montagnier, Linsman, et cetera, Dr. Lewis. I mean, some are contemporary and some have passed on to the next life. But point being that we stand on the shoulders of scientific giants who were not interested in network marketing. They weren't here because we were a network marketing company. They were here because we were a research company first and foremost, going back to 1975, the original collaboration between Dr. Bunos and Dr. Kongshav, and then of course 1978, the first paper being published by the two of them. That's why these famous doctors have been here, John. But I'd love your comments on that or your thoughts on that.
Well, all I'll say is reputation is the most important thing for these doctors. And so you're not going to get famous doctors like this for no reason at all. That famous doctors, some doctors, you pay them a lot of money, and they'll say things, but those are not the type of doctors you want. You want doctors that are generally interested in the science. And, I was able to recruit and work with people because I had great teachings from Dr. Droog and Dr. Bunos about the type of people you need to work with, you need to recruit, and you need to have involved in this. And so we're very fortunate. They were incredible people and incredible scientists.
Well,
I'd like to finish by answering Stefan's question on the scientific advisory board. Stefan, I'll give you, like the most important quality you can have, in a person in my position is what you don't know. And, we did research in many, many complex areas. And, I'll give you an example. When Dr. Bunos passed on, all of a sudden, all that knowledge on whey protein is gone. So I needed additional resources to be able to talk to on a daily basis, weekly basis, when we're running studies and we have to provide quality control data to the Canadian government, or we're looking at ways to improve or new formulations, et cetera. And so I was able to get one of the top consultants in the whey and milk industry who advised some of the biggest companies in Canada, the United States. So the scientific advisory board, in the truest sense, essentially advises the board of directors on the scientific affairs of the company and the projects, etc. So they're the eyes and ears, but they also played a critical role for me when I was doing R&D, advising me on the design of certain studies, the interpretation of data, etc. So they were great resources for me, and I used those, because I was not an expert, so I needed to be surrounded by experts.
Great.
Thank you for this background, John. This is amazing.
Okay.
Well, thank you. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Stefan. Did you have another question?
I was just curious, maybe there are other personalities on this advisory board. Can you share a couple of bullet points to each of them? Is this still in our time? It would be amazing because, like we see the lady in the third picture, Dr. Elvira Maria Hebert, or also Will Brink, and Dr. Dan Linsman. Is this something you can share with us?
Yeah,
About
I
them?
can speak about Dr. Linsman and Dr. Lewis because I was, I worked with both of them. Dr. Gutman brought the other people on, but Dr. Linsman, I started collaborating with him back in 2014. He works at the University of Denver at the Eleanor Roosevelt Institute, and he developed our basic science on the brain and how immunocal impacts different pathologies in the brain in mild cognitive impairment, in commotions, concussions, as well as Lou Gehrig's disease. And Dr. Lewis worked at the Oracle, which was one of the top sports science firms in the world, and worked with athletes all over the world and used Immunical through multiple Olympic cycles with the English Olympic team, as well as other athletes, professional baseball, football, etc. So we had our clinical data, but we also had data from Oracle on what they were seeing using their analysis and their data. So it was gave us incredible insight. And as I tell people, it gave me the opportunity to see immunocal from one spectrum, which was the stage 4 cancer patient, all the way to the Olympic athlete. So we have a very broad perspective on how immunocal acts. So again, those people were very important resources for me in developing the clinical trials and papers and knowledge about the product.
Amazing. Thank you so much, John, for this background.
Well, thank you, John, as always.
We're not done. We're not done.
Well,
We don't let opportunities like this get away.
I promised John 30 minutes, so
Well, but see, that was you. That wasn't me. But anyway, John, hey, could you elaborate a little bit more on the serendipity part of Dr. Conkshaven and Dr. Bunos and how that came about, and then how that impacted your relationship with them as a company went forward?
Well, the thing is that Dr. Bunos explained to me that the Montreal General in those days was a jewel in terms of all the research that was taking place there, because he said that the person he worked under encouraged all the surgeons to do research, because he says what you see happening in the research is going to happen in your surgeries. And so there were many geniuses there and many innovative ideas coming out of there. And I'll give you one example of, the data, when they started looking at models of cancer, they didn't understand why, they were seeing tumor inhibition in these mice, as well as, the cessation of metastasis in these mice. And they go down the hall, and lo and behold, there's Dr. Gerald Baptiste, who's now, head of oncology at one of the top hospitals in Montreal and McGill University, who said you should look at glutathione. So again, having these type of people with this type of insight and this type of environment, it was ripe for discovery.
Okay, John. So tell them a little bit about Dr. Conkshaven, who she is, and her about her. I mean, she's just amazing.
Well, you have to understand that she was unique in terms of being an immunologist in that time. At the Montreal General Hospital. And the fact that, they chose serendipitously to study immune function in these mice where she had, all the models set up. I mean, that's, it's almost like the hand of God walks in and says, okay, you two have to get to know each other. I mean, why would that occur? I mean, and she's...
and Dr. Budos liked opera, right?
Well, sorry?
Remember her comments about Dr. Budos and his opera?
Yeah. Well, but again, it's all these things came together, and for no apparent reason other than the circumstance. So it's we're very lucky that they met, and she had what he needed because he wasn't a specialist in this area and didn't have access to the models. But he complemented her in terms of his knowledge, so it was a great marriage.
So it was a serendipity of effect of all these people coming together years before, you and Chuck Roberts meeting with them through Alex Koningsberg came about, and now we have this 29 years later. Okay, for since that meeting took place, we've got people in the Canary Islands, we've got people in Europe and Germany and Switzerland, the UK, Ireland, South America, Canada, US, everywhere, all because of that serendipity event that comes together. So as we look at this business going forward, we just need to carry forward with that mission, right?
Well, there's a message in that, and I saw a really interesting video the other day. Actually sent it to John. Tom Brady was talking, and he said, I didn't have the greatest arm. I didn't have 4.3 speed. I didn't have the physical attributes, but I had discipline, and I had, was able to bring that discipline forward on a daily basis. And it's the discipline of looking every day for these opportunities and following up. And, that's essentially all these different things were, would never have developed by themselves. But the fact that we are able to marry all these things together is you just never know what come about, but if you work hard and you look constantly, you can weave you can weave something together. And that's what this was an opportunity weaved together through multiple meetings, through multiple serendipitous circumstances, etc. And that's essentially a great metaphor for life.
Absolutely, John. Absolutely. All right. Well, Mr. Solider, Stefan, one of you want to pick it up and
Well, yeah, I just want to thank John and everybody for being here. And Stefan, I think you had one other guest that was going to speak a
Yes,
couple minutes.
exactly. In German, of course.
Okay.
Okay, so we switch to the next part. So thank you so much again, also to John Molson to share all the insights with us, and also for myself as an internal to get more historical background, how important it is to understand how the company was shaped and how all the coincidence came together and yeah, created this great opportunity for all of us worldwide. So big thank you again. Okay, now I switch to German. So, hallo und willkommen zurück hier zu unserem deutschsprachigen Zoom. Ich hoffe, dass einige von euch einiges von dem englischsprachigen hier von John Molson, unserem Wissenschaftsbeirat, Mitglied, mitnehmen konnten. Ich werde gern den Flyer, wo er nochmal mit drauf erwähnt ist, hier mit euch teilen auf Deutsch in unserer WhatsApp-Gruppe von John und Keith, ganz wichtig. Und wie gesagt, ich habe ihn hier schon als Link auf Englisch reingepostet in unseren Chat, da es ein Dokument ist, was dann zukünftig auch für unsere deutschsprachigen Consultants im Backoffice im Ressourcen Center zur Verfügung stehen wird. Und da ist es ganz wichtig, den Hintergrund zu kennen. Ich freue mich heute hier umso mehr, dass natürlich wir einen unserer vertrauten Sprecher zu Wort kommen lassen, denn ja, es schreitet voran. Wir haben noch 4 Wochen bis zum offiziellen Eröffnung von Deutschland und Österreich. Viele von euch wissen bereits, dass bereits die Schweiz eröffnet wurde im Juli unter den Minimalumständen, sprich englischsprachig und mit der Euro-Währung. Warum erzähle ich euch das? Weil es ein großartiger Erfolg ist. Im August gingen die Zahlen durch die Decke in der Schweiz. Es ist wirklich großartig zu sehen. Und daher haben wir natürlich auch gewisse Erwartungshaltung an Deutschland und Österreich. Einer unserer großen Pioniere einer von denen ist heute hier auf dem Call und hat die ersten Kunden bereits auf unsere Landingpage, auf die sogenannte Vorregistrierungswebseite gebracht und freue mich daher umso mehr, dass er über seine ersten Erfolge mit uns hier spricht. Ihr kennt ihn bereits, er ist Osteopath und auch in dem Alternativmedizin zu Hause. Er ist auch in der chinesischen Medizin zu Hause. Willkommen, lieber Klaus Müller.
Guten Abend, ja, das ist ja eine Ehre, die ich gar nicht beschreiben kann. Ich würde es am liebsten natürlich auch in Englisch sagen. Es ist unfassbar für mich, dieser Call heute. Ich habe schon die Prospekte gelesen, ich habe auf den Internetseiten alle diese Namen gelesen und plötzlich sitze ich mit Leuten in einem Call, die diese Leute persönlich kennen und mir zeigen, welche unfassbare Geschichte da schon so lange dahinter steckt. Also das zeigt mir nochmal die Größenordnung auf, die hinter Immunotech steht, die einem manchmal gar nicht so bewusst ist. Und mit solchen Calls, ob jetzt mit Keith oder mit John und auch mit John, Dankeschön, unfassbar diese Historie und wie diese Dinge zusammenwachsen und die richtigen Leute zum richtigen Zeitpunkt zusammengekommen sind und diesen Spirit haben, das voranzutreiben. beeindruckt mich am meisten und ich möchte einen Teil davon lernen. Ich habe in meinem Team, meine Upline ist auch so wie ich, die treibt mich immer wieder an und es macht tierisch Spaß jetzt mit Stefan Deutschland voranzutreiben. Wir haben jeden Tag etwas damit zu tun. Und ich habe jetzt auch für Übungszwecke deutsche Präsentationen gemacht und habe natürlich jetzt den riesen Vorteil, das ist das, was wir eben gerade gesagt haben, die Landingpage hilft ungemein mit, weil ich jetzt etwas in der Hand habe. Die müssen nicht mehr mit den Hufen scharen und schwierig über Spanien bestellen, sondern sie können direkt in Deutschland etwas vorordern und ausprobieren. Und ich habe, es sind insgesamt drei zwar nur, aber immerhin ist es so, dass eine Person, die war so begeistert davon, dass es A sehr schnell ging, was vorher eben ein bisschen schwieriger war, und sie mir im Grunde genommen ganz voller Freude auch mit einem FaceTime gezeigt hat, boah, da sind ja Kärtchen drin, ich weiß, wie das gemischt wird, es ist eine super Information und das beflügelt mich natürlich, meine nächsten Präsentationen noch mehr dahin zu leiten. Und ich bin sehr dankbar, dass es diese Möglichkeit, die ja erstmals mit Deutschland jetzt ausprobiert worden ist mit einer Landingpage, dass ich dadurch die Möglichkeit habe, den Interessenten, Consultants, Kunden schon im Vorfeld die Möglichkeit zu geben, alles auszuprobieren und anzugucken. Ja, und dann nochmal recht herzlichen Dank für diese interessanten, geschichtlichen, historischen Ausführungen der gesamten Firma. Recht herzlichen Dank.
Dankeschön, Klaus. Ich übersetze es gerne zurück zu unseren drei Koryphäen. So, I want to translate back to you, to John Molson, to John Solider and Keith Hooper, of course, how impressed Klaus Müller is to get more knowledge about the history and being together with you here on the call, John Molson, because he has seen so many materials. He has read so many materials about the company, but he feels much more honored to be with you here on this Zoom call and hear and listen to you directly, John Molson, what exactly happened in the past and how everything came together to create the magic of the company. And this inspires him much more. And he's doing the first steps in Germany and Austria. But of course, he's already registered via Spain and living in Spain. And learning more and more about the company. So he want to say directly to you, big thank you, John Molson.
Well, Klaus, that means a lot, and I'm very happy to do that and very happy to support everybody on the call. You know, Dr. Bunos did that for me many years ago. He gave me knowledge, and so it was I always took it upon myself to pass on what he gave to me, and it's my pleasure.
Thank you very much for this. It's unbelievable. That gives me really a spirit and it gives me pace for going forward and going and be disciplined and go forward. That's exactly what you said before.
There you go. Good for you.
Thank you.
Okay, great. So yeah, we going forward with a little bit German. So das heißt, Klaus, was war für dich so jetzt hast du natürlich den Hintergrund eines Selbstständigen, dadurch erreichst du natürlich bereits, sage ich mal, Klienten oder Kunden, wo es für dich einfach ist, mit denen ins Gespräch zu kommen und die auf die Vorregistrierungsseite zu bringen, um die Produkte bereits auszuprobieren. Wenn jemand nicht wie du Selbstständiger ist und diesen Mindset mitbringt, welche Tipps möchtest du der oder demjenigen geben, wenn er die ersten anspricht, wenn er auch nicht vom Fach ist?
Also das haben wir auch schon mehrfach mit Rosa oder auch mit dir ja schon mal so ein bisschen diskutiert. Man muss nicht unbedingt vom medizinischen Fach sein. Ich glaube nicht, dass es notwendig ist. Aber wenn man Lust hat, sich mit der Materie zu beschäftigen, sich ein bisschen einzulesen und es eigentlich dann nur schaffen muss, es zu verstehen. Und jetzt geht es eben heute noch viel besser, wenn man Menschen sieht, die seit 30 Jahren damit zu tun haben, dann vertraut man der Sache noch viel mehr. Und letztendlich ist es einfach nur die eigene Überzeugung vorzutragen. Also ich muss niemand überreden, sondern ich gebe meine eigene Erfahrung, meine eigene Darstellung die vielleicht aus dem medizinischen Bereich ein bisschen leichter fällt. Aber letztendlich spielt es keine Rolle, aus welchem Fach ich komme, wenn ich Lust habe, mich damit zu beschäftigen und Lust habe, mich mit der Materie auseinanderzusetzen, dann kann ich jeden ansprechen und die Firma gibt ja unendlich viel Hilfsmittel dafür.
Klasse, sehr wichtiger Punkt. Danke, Klaus. Das heißt, es werden ja auch von unserer Seite dann bis Anfang Oktober alle wichtigen Materialien übersetzt sein, die ihr dann in eurem Business Center, in euren Ressourcen Center finden werdet, sobald ihr euch dann einloggen könnt. Aber Klaus, du sagst vorher eben was ganz Wichtiges. Du bist stark davon überzeugt, du hast dich in die Materie eingearbeitet, du spürst es selbst, das Produkt, wie es in dir wirkt. Heißt es aber automatisch, dass wenn du auf jemanden triffst und ihn ansprichst, dass du den vollsprudelst mit Informationen oder achtest du sehr darauf, deinem Gegenüber auch zuzuhören, was es wirklich braucht?
Das ist eigentlich für mich einer der wichtigsten Punkte, nicht nur mein Programm runterzuspulen, sondern wirklich zu gucken, was ist es für ein Mensch, was hat er für Lebensgewohnheiten, für Philosophien, ist er in der Gesundheit zu Hause und
Mhm.
ihm im Grunde genommen gar nicht so viel fachliche Information, sondern dass er nur so ein bisschen versteht, um was es geht. Also ihn nicht praktisch zu viel zuzutexten, sondern ihm auch ein bisschen die Möglichkeit zu geben, sich selber zu zeigen, was will ich eigentlich? Also man hat es ja immer wieder, dass die Leute erstmal nicht so unbedingt wissen, weil wir immer wieder glauben, ich muss etwas einnehmen, was mir schnell hilft. Und diese Überzeugung rüberzubringen, dass man sagt, gut, ich mache etwas für meine Gesundheit. Wo es stattfindet, spielt keine Rolle. Wie schnell es stattfindet, weiß ich auch nicht. Aber ich gebe meinem Körper die richtige Hilfe, dass er im Grunde genommen seine eigene Regulation sehr gut betreiben kann. Und dafür ist Glutation einfach immens wichtig. Was mir früher ich kenne Glutathion auch schon eigentlich relativ lange, aber seit Immunotech ist mir klar geworden, in wie viel Ressourcen es im Körper eigentlich zuständig ist und arbeitet. Und das finde ich einfach, das muss man dem Kunden, dem Consultant einfach aufzeigen.
Sehr gut, Klaus. Das heißt, würdest du gar nicht so sehr, jetzt wenn wir konkret von deinen drei Kunden sprechen, hatten
Ja.
die gewisse Vorerkrankungen oder irgendwas oder war das völlig unabhängig davon, wie du mit denen ins Gespräch gekommen bist?
Also erstmal waren das gar keine Patienten oder sonst was, sondern das sind, sage ich jetzt mal, Bekannte. Davon hat noch jemand einen mitgebracht, also völlig
Ja.
unbedarft. Keinerlei Vorahnungen. Meine einzige Frage war, möchtest du dir für eine Stunde etwas für deine Gesundheit anhören? Ja oder nein? Sie haben sich dafür entschieden. Wir haben eine Zeit ausgemacht, unterschiedlich, und haben einen Call vereinbart, weil sie in Deutschland sitzen und ich natürlich hier auf den Kanaren. Und dann habe ich im Grunde genommen meine Präsentation gemacht. Sie haben im Grunde genommen auch sehr gute Fragen wieder gestellt. Also gar nicht so vom Fach zu sein, das musste ich überhaupt nicht im Grunde genommen groß anpreisen.
Ah, wunderbar. Das heißt, die Präsentationsmaterialien waren dir von der Firma bekannt und du hast sie dir selbst dann ein bisschen noch zusammengestellt, damit sie für dich funktionieren, oder?
Ganz genau. Wir haben ja so ein bisschen Material, was wir schon früher in Spanien verwendet haben mit den Aufstellern. Mit
Ja.
Rosa zusammen haben wir dann mal auch uns mit dem Deutschen so zusammengesetzt und haben da etwas gebastelt, womit wir gut arbeiten können. Und wie gesagt, da ist es überhaupt nicht wichtig, dass weder waren das Leute, die eben eine Krankheit oder eine Krankheit hatten, sondern die einfach Lust hatten, sich das anzuhören. Und dann kam
Mhm.
natürlich im Gespräch raus, Mensch, das wäre ja schon gut, mein Schlaf ist nicht so oder dieses oder jenes. Also sie haben dann letztendlich schon preisgegeben, dass ihre Gesundheit ihnen wichtig ist und dass sie auch anfängt, nicht mehr so 100% zu funktionieren und sie deswegen etwas tun möchten, was sehr gut hilft. Das Interessante dabei war ja, es kommt ja immer dann die Frage, ja, das kostet ja auch was. Und
Mhm.
dann sieht man, oh ja, das ist ja nicht das günstigste, aber das konnte ich sehr schnell und sehr gut entkräftigen. Ich habe einen gebeten, mal seine Mittel zu holen, die er momentan einnimmt. Und das waren dann bei der einen Person 8 verschiedene Produkte, die aus Herbolarias, also sprich aus Naturkostläden kommen, die auch nicht günstig sind. Und ich habe gefragt, ob es denn eine Wirkung gezeigt hat. Und keines der Produkte hatte tatsächlich eine Wirkung. Und so war es natürlich für mich relativ leicht zu sagen, schau mal, was kannst du machen, was kannst du den Körper unterstützen. Und ich bin gespannt auf die Rückmeldungen, die sicherlich kommen werden.
Herzlichen Dank, Klaus Müller von Teneriffa, richtig? Und
Korrekt.
das ist doch mal eine tolle Rückmeldung. Ihr seht, es ist wichtige Erkenntnisse, die wir hier rausgewinnen. Du musst nicht vom Fach sein, aber mach dich vertraut mit den Inhalten. Lerne dein Produkt kennen, spüre selber, was das Produkt für dich tut. Und wenn du auf Interessenten triffst, schau einfach, dass du dir Zeit einräumst, mit denen eine Präsentation zu machen und natürlich genau darauf zu achten, was deren Signale sind, also welchen Bedarf haben die. Und ihr habt es gerade gehört von Klaus, man muss nicht sehr ins Detail gehen, um abzutasten, wo bei denen der Bedarf ist, sondern manchmal reicht es wie in diesem Falle aus, über die allgemeine Gesundheit und deren Gesundheitsbewusstsein schon wirklich eine gute Präsentation zu halten. Also nochmal Dankeschön an Klaus Müller an dieser Stelle. Und wenn wir auf die Uhr schauen, wir sind schon am Ende unserer Veranstaltung heute angekommen und ich bedanke mich recht herzlich und gebe zurück zu Keith und John. So thank you very much and I give back to Keith and John.
Okay, Keith, you got anything? I got two fast things, but I'll throw it to you first.
No, go
Wrap
ahead,
up.
and then I'll wrap up. Go ahead.
Okay. Okay. Two things for John's benefit. Those of you who don't have your cameras on, if you can put your cameras on, and just for those of you in the medical profession, be it that you're nurses, doctors, dentists, chiropractors, etc., just raise your hand for a second, just to give John an idea of who he's talking to here today. Barry, put your hand up. Klaus, put your hand up.
I I don't listen the
Ah,
question.
put medical. Your medical background.
Yeah, I have a medical background. Yes.
Okay, and Dr. Jim McCallum's here, but he's shy. He's not putting his camera on. So there's at least four medical folks on the phone here, John. And just for the benefit of our new friends that are on the call here, how many of us have used Immunical for more than, let's say, 10 years? If you could just raise your hands, okay? All right. So if you're wondering, we've talked a lot about product today, and some of these calls are focused on products. Some of them are more focused on business. And, we've had kind of a combination of both. And then launching a new market, especially with two languages. I mean, it's a hodgepodge of information. We're trying to give everybody the benefit of as much information as we possibly can. But in doing that, okay, those of you who are looking at this, as you should be, as a business opportunity, let me tell you, most multi-level companies don't last 10 years. We have people on this call that have been using this product for over, not 10 years, okay? But raise your hand if you've been using it more than 20 years, okay? And Wally Kralick's here. So there's Wally Kralick down there, over 20 years. Patricia, you're what now, 15? 15 years? Not 8 years. 8 years, okay. And so, once again, if you're looking for longevity in your business, okay, Paul raised his hand. He's shy. He's not putting his camera on. Paul's out in Newfoundland, Canada. Once again, if you're going to make money in network marketing, you need a product people stay on. Whether they build a business or not is irrelevant. You need a product people stay on. The great companies in our industry, the Amways, the Herbalifes, the Shackleys, the Nu Skins, the Melaleucas, et cetera, the big companies, the multi-billion-dollar brands in network marketing, all have one thing in common. They've all got products that people buy month in, month out, whether they're building a business or not. The majority of the people, just like in Immunotech, are not necessarily building a business, but they're taking the product. And the success that I've had and the success that some of the other folks on this call and a lot of people who aren't on this call have had is because people stay on this product once they understand it. It's a one of a kind. And that's something that John certainly illustrated today. So anyway, that's all I had. Keith, I'll throw it to you to wrap up.
All right. Thank you, John. And once again, everybody was here. We're going to go ahead and allow everybody to unmute themselves if they would like. Once again, John, thank you so much for being here. John Molson, thank you, John Solider as well. Thank you, Dr. Mueller. Thank you very much. Stefan, thank you for being here. Even though I guess as I look around the call today, you're almost one of the newbies, okay, here. As John and I were talking about all those years ago here with Immunotech. So take advantage of what you have here. Take advantage. John has posted some links, by the way, into the chat. That'll lead you to some of John Solider's incredible information. Take advantage of those. Click on those and save them. while we're here. Just grab those links. Um, because network marketing is built on skill sets. It's not talent, it's skill sets. The beautiful thing about skills is you can learn them, but you can't learn them from somebody that can't do them. So what you got with John Solider is the master. If you're a master builder, a master craftsman, okay, that's what you've got, and that's what you've got access to with what John just made available to you. So make sure you grab that, because so much today people want to go out and talk about things, and if they talk about somebody that's talented, well, you can't build a business off of talented people, but you can certainly build an empire off of people that have skills. And that's what you've got here. So John's made that available to you freely. Just take it and make sure you don't miss that. Grab that and work on the skills. Work on the skill sets, for what you have here. So take advantage of that. We will turn this into a couple of videos. We'll make them available, get them over to Stefan, get them up on the groups. Stefan, you want to make people aware of the Telegram group or any of the other social media stuff that they may want to hook into for the dock area?
Yes, I can post it again in our WhatsApp group, and I can share here with you, of course, to make sure that everyone is aware of. We have a German-speaking group running and growing in Telegram. Telegram is more useful than WhatsApp. If someone who joins new into a group, he can still access the communication of the last 100 messages, and of course has access to all the documents which were posted in the past. Hopefully I can do the quick job. I know Rosa is really good in this, to copy the link from the group into the chat. So maybe Rosa, if you can help me with, would be amazing. Otherwise, I do it later in our WhatsApp group to share the German-speaking link to the Telegram group.
Okay. All right. Anyone else have a question, comment for John Molson before, because once again, John, it's such a pleasure to have you here. Such an honor for you to take some time out of your day to join us. I mean,
My pleasure. I'll offer that, if anybody has a technical question, they can certainly email me. And if you'd like, Dr. Bunos wrote a document called The History of Immunical, where he details in his sarcastic way how the whole process came about. And so I have that on file, and I'd be happy to send it to someone if they email me. So I'm at jmolson@immunitech.com, MOLSON.
Yeah. So take advantage of John, but the opportunity to promote you. Don't write long emails to John, and because he's got a lot of people contacting him. But if you've got a quick question, it's great. He'll get back to you shortly. That's what we've done for all these years. I really appreciate what John and his team of people have given us and what we have here. But take advantage of that. So it's jmolson@immunitech.com. And if you've got a question on that, it's incredible because it's a growing experience. It's a growing experience. It's here.
And one other point on that too, okay, this is an organism. And what I mean by that is an organism is a living thing. Immunical has been an organism since the 28 years that I've been here and Keith's been here and Wally's been here. Okay, that it continues to evolve. I mean, you look at the research that's coming out on some of the things that we're studying today that maybe 28 years ago weren't necessarily thought about. I mean, the brain studies alone, and I just give you a real fast reference point, not to belabor the call, but I'll give you this quick, and we can all get on with our days. I'm at the gym this morning, and I'm training with a guy, and we're talking about concussions. And my son was an elite hockey player, but unfortunately got concussed 5 times in his career, and the 5th time kind of ended his career. He decided after that he wants to be an engineer and he needs to be able to think clearly. So that was the end of junior hockey. Broke my heart on the one hand. On the other hand, I've got a kid that's going to be an engineer who's brilliant. So thank God for that. But my son has used Immunical throughout his life since he's 5 years old. And I was telling this guy who's a personal trainer about that. Well, all of a sudden, what I didn't know about this guy was that he had played football, okay, at one of our Texas universities, and he had been concussed 5 times. And I started to tell him about the research that we're doing with Dr. Linsman, and all of a sudden, I got a new customer Okay. I got the guy product this morning. Literally, I came back to my house, got him product, brought it back to him at the gym. Okay. The guy trains about, I don't know, 15, 20 people a week. He's an elite trainer. So my only point about that is that, and when something's an organism, when we started this, as John could tell you and Keith could tell you, we didn't have the benefit of that study. But by listening to calls like this and being in contact with John and with the other people on our medical advisory board, I'm aware of that. All of a sudden, it helps my business because I go, well, wait a minute. Here's a guy who's got influence in our community. Here's a guy who was an elite athlete who's now training, elite athletes, non-elite athletes, et cetera. Okay. But he's got an interest because of his personal situation with being concussed, similar to my kid. Okay. And I know the fact that, well, let me get you this Linsman information about TBIs. Okay. That's how you use these things to build your business. You don't just go out there and go, I got a business in multi-level. Who cares? Multi-levels, it's not even a business anymore. Okay. Immunical is a business because the brand is so relevant that it makes the business work, not the other way around. And that's where multi-level right now is in a really weird predicament. Okay, is the business model works when you have a product that works. We've got the ultimate product that works. Look at the science, look at the information, but to my point, know as an organism what that information is, and you will become more valuable when you go out there in the marketplace to say, oh, traumatic brain injuries, got something for you. Autism, got something for you. HIV, got something for you. Okay. Just general health and well-being in a climate of different situations, be it COVID, monkeypox, all the other things that are being talked about in the media. Okay. We've got something for you. Okay. Just general health and well-being because you're tired of feeling like you don't feel well, I got something for you. But that's how you learn all of this stuff. And that's, anyway, that's why I'm still here after 28 years, still going strong and everything else. That's why John Molson's still here after almost 30 years. That's why Keith's still here, and Wally's still here, and some of the rest of you are still here, is because we understand the value of what this product brings to the marketplace, and the business works because the product works, plain and simple. So anyway, that's my preaching for today. I've got other calls to get on. So thank you all for being here. We'll talk again in 2 weeks.
Thank you.
Thanks, John.
Okay.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everybody.
Thank you all. Have a nice evening. Schönen Abend an alle.
Dankeschön.
Thanks, Mike. Say hello.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Cheers.
Bye.
Thank you all. Rosa, did you enjoy?
Fantastic call, as usual. That was amazing.
Well, we're glad.
Great.
We're glad we're able to do that.